This is India, or Bharat when Hindi. I'm sure that every one of you knows what India is and that it's a very unique place, either because of the people along with their horrible stereotypes and hilarious internet memes, or, if you're a more educated person, then from its relevance and importance of today's geopolitics. Because what you have to know is that India is large, and with every single day is becoming even larger. India now is like an inescapable pandemic that just hides itself everywhere behind everything. You hear of clothes produced in India, call centers stationed in India, and even people from India outside of India all across the world. It's like winning civilization without even conquering directly. But even the biggest players once started off very small, and we're here to look at its entirety from beginning to present. Let's enjoy the history of India. And spoiler, it's huge. This is the Indian subcontinent around 70,000 years ago. The first humans have recently set foot on Indian soil, and tens of thousands of years later, in 2500 BCE, the first urban civilization was found along the Indus River, which we call for simplicity Indus. Indus was one of the first three urban civilizations behind both Egypt and Mesopotamia. Indus was built around the two relatively large cities Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, and it's unclear whether there were two separate states with each city as a capital, or one empire with Harappa replacing Mohenjo-daro due to flooding. Along two cities, Indus even had own literature consisting of 250 to 500 partly deciphered characters, all Dravidian and now Southern Indian ethnic definition. But the second great invention with an unknown inventor was its faith. The civilization was very agricultural and had trade relations with Rajasthan, Persia and southern India. Irrigation-wise, Indus very much relied on domesticated animals like cats, buffalo and Asian elephants, as well as on crops such as sesame and cotton. Oh, and then came this man after a 6-year-long journey across the Ganges region with an own invention to find mental peace. How the Indus era came to an end is uncertain, but what's known is that Mohenjo-daro was raided by Aryans, i.e. not these Aryans but rather people from Central Asia, thus ending the Indus era and beginning the Vedic period around 1700 BCE. The Vedic period saw great Aryan migration with no real urbanization unlike in Indus times. The meetings between natives and invaders often went on violently, with the Aryans ruling over the natives. How did they secure power, you ask? Arms? Torture? Well, yes, but also by simply dividing the society into castes, each having a different value than the other. And this caste system was an ancient invention that is even used by the year of 2020. The Vedic period came to an end with India's first known dynasty, the Haryaka Dynasty, in 684 BCE, and a South Indian religion, Jainism, founded by Mahavira. And don't confuse this with this, because this just totally ripped off this. The Haryaka Dynasty first had Rashagriha and later Pataliputra as its capital, and was one of many smaller Indo-Aryan states, but it, Kosala, Avanti and Magadha being the most relevant. The Haryakas were replaced by the Shaishunaga Dynasty in 413 BCE, having also Rajagriha and later Pataliputra as its capital. The Shaishunagas conquered the kingdom of Avanti and were then succeeded by the Nanda Dynasty. And the Nanda were very busy with conquest, conquering practically all of northern India with an army estimated to have had 200,000 infantry and 25,000 mounted units, but come to an end after 22 years. Because a new threat just made its way into India. Hey, here comes Alexander the Great with his European fellows to conquer you. Oh, I don't recommend you going further east if you demand for staying healthy. Ah, fine, you win. India's first major dynasty was that of the Mauryas, succeeding the Nanda in 320 BCE, founded by this guy. He gained a bit of extra territory via the treaty with Seleucus, the first Mikator of Syria, granting him all land east of Kabul, which he recently gained from Alexander the Great. Chandragupta's grandson Asoka gave his empire its greatest extent, in which it had only the state of Kerala left to control the entire subcontinent. It should be mentioned that Asoka was very open towards Buddhism and was able to keep the empire together despite its linguistic diversity. After his death in 232 BCE, the empire was split in half, with the west quickly succumbing to Bactrian invasions, while the eastern half remained under Mauryan rule before being continued by the Shungas around 50 years later. The Shungas regained a bit of the Maurya's old territory from the Kalinga Satavahanas, Indo-Greeks and possibly the Panchalas. Unlike Asoka, the Shungas were not as friendly towards Buddhist monks and persecuted them. Therefore, in the following war, the monks supported the Bactrians, who were able to push as far as Pataliputra, but due to civil war were pushed out of the Ganges River basin. The last emperor was assassinated by the founder of the following Kanva dynasty in 72 BCE, but the Kanvas were quickly replaced by the Satvahanas, who would become the next territorially dominant dynasty by later occupying all of these lands, and then by successfully defending themselves against western satraps even a few more. Despite the rulers being Hindu, Brahmanism and Buddhism were still welcomed by the Satvahanas. The economy, meanwhile, still relied on agriculture, but this time also on its attractive trading location and the production of commodities. The Satvahanas ruled for 3 centuries before the empire split into 5 smaller kingdoms, which would continue to coexist for another 100 years. And one major dynasty directly follows the other, because in Magadha the Guptas Guptas, found by this man, have made their own empire around Pataliputra again, and expanding over all of northern and east India. They achieved this either forcefully, so far nothing too special, or via marriage alliance. After expansion, Kumaragupta I was more busy with his sympathy towards religion and federalization. The Gupta dynasty lost power through northern regions like Punjab and Kashmir falling under Indo-German and Han rule. In 550 AD, the Guptas receded into history and their empire split into small principalities. The most important of these being the Maukharis and the later Guptas, whose connection to the actual Guptas is uncertain. At first, both were rivals with the Harshavardhanas, then broke free from vassalage and became very good with each other through, you've guessed it, marriage alliance, with later one betraying the other. The Maukharis first overran the Guptas, but were somehow pushed back by them, with the Guptas gaining final supremacy over the Maukharis before being subdued by the Ghudas from the east. But we're now going to look further west because a totally new invention has made its way into India. Islam came into India very quickly because of already existing trade relations between the Indian subcontinent and the Arab peninsula. Therefore, the first Muslim communities in India were found along the western coast in Sindh, Bengal, Gujarat, Kerala and Ceylon. The first Arab conquests saw Kapisa, Zabulistan and the Sindh fall under Arab rule, and with the Umayyads then taking over Arabia, the forces advanced even further beyond the Indus River into southern Punjab, meeting resistance in Makran, however. The Arabs then occupied more northern territories like Kashmir and tried to invade the Deccan Plateau, but were defeated in 739 and kept behind the Thar Desert, with the Sindh being independent. The Umayyads then succumbed to the Abbasids, who between 787 and 815 attacked and plundered most of the lost land, with the Sindh being independent again. By as late as 850, Arab invasion pretty much stopped at where it was at this point, but this didn't stop Islam to further spread all across the subcontinent, because tributes and raids saw the old orders collapsing, thus leaving room for new ones, Islamic ones. One such order was the Ghaznavid Empire, founded in 977, succeeding the later split Samanid Empire. At first it was mostly in Persia, but later was forced to flee eastwards into the regions of Gujarat and modern Afghanistan due to Seljuk interventions in the west. This greatly weakened the empire, and when in 1186 its new capital, Lahore, fell to the Ghurids, its turn ran out. It were now the Ghurids who continued the Ghaznavids' old territory and duties, with later expanding through all of northern India, advancing into modern Bangladesh. It was the Sunni Persian-ruled empire, replacing the old Buddhist order by constructing mosques and Islamic schools all across the empire. And though it quickly succumbed to the Delhi Sultanate in the east and the Khwarezmids in the west by as late as 1210, its influence on spreading Islam all across India has clearly left its marks. The previously mentioned Delhi Sultanate was India's next big era, with